Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Between Two Brokers. Want to do a Dear Schmoopy?
Yeah.
You ready, Schmoop?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's Schmoopy time. Thank you so much, dear listeners, for writing into podcast at smithspencer.com. Keep all of your questions coming. Question numero uno. Dear Schmoopy, I am a real estate agent and I want to sell my house. I am very emotional about it and am considering hiring someone at my firm to help me, but really want every dollar I can get. What advice do you have for me, Schmoopy? Oh, this one hits home for me.
Yeah. Well, and me too, because I felt your pain. I would say you are going to get every dollar you can get by having someone help you. Mm-hmm. Just tell them you're going to like split the commission or whatever. But I think you would have sold your house earlier
If I had hired you.
Yeah.
So,
And in the end, I don't think people know this, but you decided not to sell for a very good reason. So it all worked out. But had you truly wanted to sell the house, we would have sold it.
So, I mean, one thing that I say that real estate agents do is like they help a client like get out of their own way. So I was, okay, so I decided to sell my house. I had some offers. I had some contracts fall through. In my opinion, none of it really had anything to do with me. It had to do with like the shifting market, but could I have handled things better and more professionally and stuff like that? Like one of my good friends who's an agent who I love asked me for comps and I left him like a 3-minute voicemail on why that was like absolutely stupid and it was a waste of time. And why are you asking me for comps? And, I mean, of course I never would have done that if I were the listing agent, but I was like, come on, like you can see everything I see. There isn't anything like my house. And why are you having me go through this stupid exercise? And it really was because I was exhausted, emotional. And I'm like, just have your clients like bring me the contract that they want. So, so I had, several offers and probably had taken some things I shouldn't have taken. And if I had had an agent protecting me, they probably would have been a little bit more guarded and proactive. And maybe we would have gotten a deal. Maybe we wouldn't, I don't really know what would have happened. But going the route that I went, which was being my own real estate agent, did not achieve the desired result of selling my house. So
in this market,
I
would say had you listed like 2 months earlier, probably wouldn't have been an issue. Yeah.
January through April this year, like anything went. It didn't matter. So I put also, like everyone, I put a ridiculous price on my house. There was no comps to support it. There were no comps to support it, but you could get away with that in the beginning. And I think I missed it by just like a couple of weeks. But an agent is your advocate. And I believe that your agent pays for themselves because they're able to I am so tough as a listing agent. Like when a buyer's agent brings me something, and my sellers don't necessarily know this, but they're like, well, my buyers, and I'm like, no, and I think that I have a very strong and direct and intimidating personality, so I can kind of get away with that. And so I don't even like bug them with stupid shit.
Right. You didn't have that filter. Yes. When you were the seller and representing yourself.
Right. I was like, oh, and I got emotionally attached to people. So I got emotionally attached to certain people who I thought had a really sweet story. And then I got really pissed off at people who sounded like assholes. And then my neighbors were in my ear and they're like, what's going on? And like, I quit wanting to go for walks in my neighborhood because like, everybody was asking me what was going on. It was just a very personal situation and I felt very vulnerable the whole entire time. And I feel like if I had representation and even like, I kept like joking with you about it. And even talked to Kim and Christy on our team about it. And like, I'm sure somebody would have worked out a deal with me to some degree because I needed somebody to negotiate for me.
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily need anybody to do my paperwork. I can handle all my repair. Like there's all this other stuff that I can do that, a regular seller client wouldn't do. So I'm sure I could have saved a little bit of money if that's what made me feel better. But at the same time, it's like, I don't even like nickel and diming people or asking for a discount. If they do their job, then I feel like you should give them a full commission. But like, I had agents on my team approach me and say, look, if you need me, I'm there for you. And I'm happy if you don't sell it in this period of time, like I'm happy to discuss listing it with you. And I'm sure the other agents on the other side didn't love dealing directly with me, and I think it also made buyers skeptical of me.
Mm-hmm. Well, you get defensive.
Yeah.
Which is, every seller does.
Yeah. So, and I think people think that I'm like super tough, but I'm not. I'm very, very sensitive and I'm very, very emotional. And, it's my home and it's my creation. And I had people come in and say things like, well, we really wish you would have renovated the master bathroom. And I renovated every single square inch of my house. I just happened to use like an antique looking tile, but people are so fucking stupid. I'm sorry. I'm just like that. And that was my
This is why she needs an agent.
I mean, when I read that feedback, I was like, oh God, okay. And then, I had agents that no-showed. I had, my house was very unique looking. And so, like, people put stuff all over Instagram. And I think probably they had, like, random, like, people reach out to them on Instagram and be like, hey, can you show me this? Versus, like, having an actual client that wanted to see it. And so I had no-shows. I had last-minute cancellations. If I were the list agent for a house like mine, I always call and vet. And I didn't even do that for myself because I felt I did it like one or two times and people acted like I was acting like an asshole about it. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I totally believe you should hire a professional. I have sold two homes previously on my own for myself without any trouble. But my home is in a different caliber now. It's a luxury home. I feel like it's a different market. It's a different buyer. And I think when I do it again, that I'll hire somebody from the team. I'll hire you and pay you for it. So that's been my experience. And, if I sold it for my list price, I would be saying the exact opposite. So,
right. Yeah. I think one thing that you kind of touched on that is important to reiterate is the feedback. Like, we do everything through Showing Time, which sends an automatic feedback form. And a lot of the times we filter that before it gets to the seller because buyers will put unnecessary comments in there.
Yeah.
Critiquing stupid things that can be easily changed. One of my listings a couple years ago, they just filled it out with how much the house would show better without all of the seller's brown furniture. Everything's brown, but they just harped on this brown thing. And my seller wanted to see, like, he didn't want me to filter the feedback. And I tried. And he got so offended that they were criticizing his interior design taste. So, I mean, the fact that you're representing yourself and you see 100% of the feedback, it's just unnecessary.
You're totally right. I mean, and like I had somebody say, that my buyers really wished you had a flat backyard. 90%, and there's no hills in Charleston. I'm like, well, you could see that it was on a hill, couldn't you, from the photos? And 90% of my buyers wanted a pool, and I never advertised that there was room for a pool. You could look at the photos and see that the backyard was like really small. So that really frustrated me. I mean, as a buyer's agent, it's like,
you call in advance before you even bother showing and say, hey, a pool for my buyers is a non-negotiable. Is there room for one?
And I had the agent that ultimately was about to bring me the last contract, between him and his partner. He was out of town on vacation a couple of times. They asked me like 4 different times if I had a survey, and I was just, I mean, literally every single thing was annoying the shit out of me. And plus I was working and whatever. So, I definitely recommend just you've got to take the emotion out of it. I mean, because it's money. It's the same thing with your investments. Like, you're going to have people nickel and diming you about stupid shit, and you just really need to have an advocate who you know is on your team, who's looking out for your best interest, advising you and being like, you know what, let's like, they gave you this, let's give them this, that kind of thing. I mean, that's what we get paid to do, basically, is to make sure that everybody stays reasonable throughout the negotiation process. So especially if you're listing a luxury property, I think for like a discerning buyer, and in our market now, which there's so much uncertainty, and I feel like, somebody was going to have to overspend for my house. You just really need somebody being like, this is one of a kind, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And
it sounds like this, listener, well, she's a listener. So she would know that I sold my own Airbnb without hiring an agent, but I wasn't emotionally attached to that. And she said in the question that she was very
emotional. Her own home, yeah.
Right.
And if you already know you're emotional, you have to get out of your own way.
And the Airbnb was at a much different price point. I mean, it was in the buyer pool for that was huge, whereas the buyer pool for your house is much smaller. Mainly because of the price point.
Yeah.
But I had no emotional ties, and I was actually like, couldn't wait to get rid of that house.
Yeah. And I mean, one of the things I struggled with when I was evaluating whether or not I should hire somebody was, do I because I had a bunch of people saying that they wanted to help me, and they're like, I don't even know if I'm going to charge you, or I'll work out something. You know me better than anybody else. So you would be the person that no one knows me and how I do business and how I react better than you. And you also specialize in Mount Pleasant. So I think one of the hard things is like, again, it's like we talk about on the podcast all the time, like choosing somebody. Well, Erin's my fucking business partner. So it goes without saying that she would be my agent. But again, the person who knows you the best, who's going to save you from yourself and who specializes in your area is really going to be the best option for you. So that's our advice, dear listener. Thank you so much for tuning into podcast@smithspencer.com. Keep the questions coming. Don't forget to check out our Instagram at Between Two Brokers and Smith Spencer Real Estate.
We used to be Smith Spencer Charleston. I think we're Smith Spencer Real Estate.
You can see how much I get on Instagram.
We don't handle our own social media anymore.
Check us out on @Between Two Brokers and @Smith Spencer Real Estate, and keep all of your questions coming to podcast@smithspencer.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe, and tell all your friends about the world's best real estate podcast. Bye.